Hello and welcome to the Eurogamer.net podcast, episode 117. Game Face. I am Tom Bramwell. Hello, and I'm joined by, on my right, Martin Robbins.
Hello.
And Christian Donlan.
Hi.
We're going to talk about a number of things today. Three, in fact. They are going to be Spec Ops: The Line, which is 2K and is it Jaeger?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. There would have, obviously, if it was rubbish, there were some good potential headlines there involving Jaeger bombs, etc. But their new game, which is inspired by Joseph Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness, rather incredibly, for a game where you crouch behind walls a lot. And we're also going to talk about Peter Moore's comments about how he believes that we are heading towards a future of free-to-play only games, which sounds like a lot of bollocks to me, so we'll get into that. And then we also have my new favourite section, Questions from the Internet, which should be amazing. I mentioned some of the topics we would be discussing in order to elicit questions from people on Twitter, and this resulted in a number of highly topical contributions from the online world. So sooner or later we'll be diving into those. But first of all, Spec Ops: The Line. Now, at the time of speaking, our review hasn't gone up, but I imagine by the time this goes out, it will have. Otherwise, we're rather busting an embargo. And Christian, you reviewed Spec Ops: The Line.
That's right. Yes, I did.
And what did you make of it? Let's try to avoid numerical summaries.
Okay, I really liked it. I thought it was a very ambitious. It's weird. It's very ambitious in certain terms, and in other ways, it's very conservative, but it does everything really well. So as a shooter, I would say it's very conservative. But it's very good conservative. So I played Inversion recently. Sorry to bash it again, but Inversion is a cover-based Gears style shooter in which just nothing quite works. The cover doesn't feel that good. None of the guns work that well. They don't feel different, and you just, the way it ranges its levels and the way it throws enemies at you is not very fast.
Right,
it's not very satisfying.
But Spec Ops isn't like that.
Spec Ops is completely different. It is a bit like Gears, even though it doesn't have the kind of the weight to the characters and the size to the characters and that sort of sense of heft that you always have in Gears.
Those guys have been doing a lot of shoulder pressing.
Yes.
I think we all felt that.
But it has lovely cover stuff, and the shooting is great. The weapons all feel really good, and it has neat little ideas. Like, that's very patronising. I didn't mean that. I mean, it has very clever ideas.
Done, Spec Ops.
Sorry, God. It had sand is a big part of the environment. You're in Dubai, which has been kind of trashed by sandstorms, and there is sand piled up in all sorts of very handy locations. You can just shoot outdoors, and it just kind of flumes down into the room.
Is that quite a common part of the gameplay mechanics? I played it once at a demo a long time ago, and there was one moment where you could shoot a window, but that was it, and it seemed very much
it's probably what Cliffy B would call a palette cleanser or something like that.
Nice.
It's very scripted, and there are scenes. It has that thing where you could take. There are a lot of situations where you think you can sit around and you can whittle people down, take them out one by one, and then you think, actually, they're just standing on glass. I can just remove them, or they're standing beneath this glass. It crops up more than you might expect, but it's also the multiplayer. The levels are just booby trapped with it. It's everywhere. Brilliant. Everywhere you go around a corner, there's just glass. There's sand. Sort of sifting through a door, like in Molly.
So do you use that as a kind of indicator?
Yes, that's exactly how they use it as quite a smart indicator. It does a lot. It does a lot of things like that where it keeps things in the game. So the sand, it doesn't have. There are moments when it really wants you to shoot the sand, and it has a big red target over it. But a lot of the time, we'll just have a little trickle of sand coming down. These moral choices in the games which don't play out, which aren't that satisfying, they at least take place within the game. It's not kind of press A to be good or bad, or B to be bad. It's you actually you decide who to shoot, and you do it exactly as you would in the normal game.
Let's talk a little bit about that side of it, because obviously the thing that, and we were talking about being patronising to it earlier. One of the things that was immensely patronising in the initial stages, at least, was that everyone just wanted to call it Sand Shock, because of course any game that exhibits even the remotest intelligence or inspiration derived from anything other than aliens is labelled, an intelligent game, and the intelligent game, obviously, that everyone singles out, is BioShock.
I think the BioShock analogy holds fairly is fairly accurate, because it's not just that it is trying to do, it has a kind of literary flavour, that BioShock had a kind of literary flavour. It's that it is expressing its theme and its story through the environment, which is BioShock's big deal.
What do we mean when we say literary flavour? Do we just mean that the dialogue isn't?
No, I mean, even if they hadn't told everyone that it was based on Heart of Darkness, you would know. In the same way that even if Far Cry 2, if they hadn't spent the whole time saying it's Heart of Darkness and naming achievements after passages from the book, you would know. There's something that literary thing is very hard to describe without getting a bit wanky about it.
It's
There's just certain games have a feeling of slightly sort of textual depth to them. I can't believe I just said that. I'm sorry, everyone. But yeah, so the Bioshock comparison really holds up. The greatest strength of the game is the location, as I think is with Bioshock. I quite like the shooting in Bioshock, and I quite like people who are very clever get a lot out of the emergent stuff in Bioshock, like Tom Francis is all full of, who writes PC Gamer, it's full of amazing stories.
We all wish we were Tom Francis, because the world must just be so much more interesting.
Some of us wish we were Tom Francis, a little harder than we should. No, but
his game Gunpoint will be playable at Residence, then.
Oh, and it's excellent.
It's excellent.
But so Bioshock, I think, is a very decent, competent shooter with an amazing setting, and I think Spec Ops is very similar. The Dubai is just fascinating to wander around.
Does it? Because it's obviously a game which is just centred around gunplay, and it kind of fetishises the gunplay. Does that play into the themes as well?
Yes and no. I mean, you are, by the end of the game, you are a little bit sick of all the shooting, but I don't think it's because this kind of oppressive Conradian conflict has kind of swamped you. I think it's just because you've been through a lot of rooms of the same shooting.
That would have been my first assumption.
But there is a disconnect there, I think. Sorry to talk about wanky phrases. I'm going to talk about things being a locus point in a minute. There's a disconnect between the shooting is really great and feels really rewarding and feels really fun, and the game is about the horrors of war. But I do think what I really like about it, the thing I like about it the most, as well as the setting, is that it embraces this contradiction. It doesn't try to hide it. It's a really divided game, but it isn't pretending it's not. That's great.
So for people who perhaps haven't read The Heart of Darkness, what would you say were its essential themes, and therefore the themes that Spec Ops has inherited from it?
Well, firstly, I am not qualified to talk about this sort of thing. I have no background in lit or anything.
That's fine. None of our readers or listeners or indeed
that's not accurate. That's not accurate. I'm sure they're all sort of chewing their pipes right now and furious at me. Heart of Darkness, what it means to me is it is a book about what happens, how the veneer of civilization gets stripped away when you are in the absence of, when no one's watching.
Right.
So Heart of Darkness is about the ivory trade in the Belgian Congo. And it is about a guy called Marlowe. Jump in if I'm mangling Heart of Darkness.
Go for it.
It's about a guy called Marlowe who is a sort of a bit of a vagabond and a bit of an adventurer, and he becomes an agent for the ivory trade, and he has to go down the river to find out what happened to the previous agent, Kurtz, who was an inspirational figure who has gone silent, and the big mystery of the book is what's happened to Kurtz and what will you find when you approach the river, and it is about what these people are doing. These people who are allegedly civilized, what they are doing when they are almost like on a holiday from civilization.
It's funny actually to see this transplanted into a game, at least to some success, is in that often games where people talk about emergent gameplay are centered around this sort of, weirdly around a similar sort of thing, where it's what happens, where what makes it interesting is what people will do when they're kind of in a persistent environment and left to their own devices, and how they behave to each other. Like DayZ is a game which
and in DayZ it's mechanical. It's actually there in the mechanics of the game. In Spec Ops it's purely theatrical. So you are walking through these worlds which are where you're seeing the kind of the civilized veneer, which is so absurd and grotesque, of Dubai anyway. Sorry, Dubai, but it's true. And you're seeing it warped and sort of falling apart, and you're walking past all of these. Basically, it feels like going through Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. You're going through dioramas, which are kind of showing the collapse of this idea of civilization. There are moments in the game where it does try and bring that kind of craziness into the actual shooting. So there's a really affecting bit where and it doesn't make a big deal of it. I talk about this in a review. It doesn't make a big deal of it. There are no crash zooms and no kind of cutscenes where you're shooting guys behind a pillar and one runs out, another runs out, and you shoot them both. A third runs out and a fourth runs out, and you shoot all four of them, and then you realise the third one probably wasn't a soldier. It was kind of like wearing a dress, and you're like, I just shot someone. And also, your character can execute downed enemies, and it's when you think about that, that's really weird. It's you're a soldier. You're on essentially on a rescue mission in Dubai. You're meant to go in after this sandstorm to evacuate the place, or to find out why the evacuation went wrong.
Yeah. It's
a very literal kind of updating a Heart of Darkness. And you suddenly like, oh my god, I'm an army guy and I just curb stomped someone. That's weird.
The curb stomp really has a lot to answer for, I think.
But they use the curb stomp in a.
You can actually curb stomp.
Oh well, it's or the equivalent. You're
Right.
like breaking someone's neck with a rifle, or you're doing something nasty up close by pressing the same button that you press in Gears. So we call it a curb stomp. You are in Gears. It's just like it's part of the fun.
Who watched American History X and thought, let's make that a video game mechanic? Seriously. Anyway,
You've been to Dubai, haven't you?
Yes.
Obviously, the Dubai of this is a complete caricature, but how much of the spirit is
hang
actually?
on.
The Dubai of Dubai is a
Yeah,
complete
yeah.
caricature. I felt it was pretty accurate. I went to Dubai with Namco Bandai a couple of years ago, and it is an extraordinary place, and I never want to go back. And it captures that really well. And you think, actually, if this place was going to go bonkers, it would go bonkers a bit like this. It sounds like I'm being mean about Dubai. I mean, a lot of people... I'm from LA. A lot of people would say exactly the same thing about LA. There is that kind of that mixture of a city which really isn't meant to be there because of the desert. Is physically, built in this improbable place, but also it is just a strange, gaudy spectacle.
I think it's interesting you mentioned Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, in a sense, if you were going to try to create a sort of a theatrical theme park style experience, you would definitely choose Dubai over, to use your example, Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah. And yes. So how do you imagine, given the obviously there's quite a lot to Spec Ops beyond simply crouching behind objects and firing a gun at people? How do you imagine that the box sells the game to the average consumer?
Do you know what? I have no idea. Tell me. You tell me.
The box says it's an intense and unique war shooter.
It is. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
It is both intense and unique.
They're hardly going to go, it's an extended literary analogy on the front. Come in, guys.
Well, I'm probably being snobbish, but I did read the copy on the back of the box and just think, oh my god, that's really grammatically poor and feeble. And
at least they didn't say it's very unique.
No.
So here's one thing which is really interesting, which you just reminded me of.
Unnecessary hyphens, though.
Orson Welles was going to make a movie of Heart of Darkness, and it was going to be first person. The whole film was going to be first person. He went a long way through. I didn't prepare this comment, by the way. This just popped into my head. This is great.
This is why you're here.
And they in the Simon Callow biography of Orson Welles, there's this amazing bit where a Hollywood PR guy describes what Heart of Darkness is about, and it's like it's this crazy adventure between this guy and this gal, and they do that, and it's like that's not what Heart of Darkness is about. So it wouldn't surprise me if the back of the box hyped the
yeah.
Once you play it, it feels very, even though it doesn't copy a lot of the sequences. I kept thinking, oh, this is a Grove of Death, and it doesn't have the crucial bit at the end, which is Conrad fans, the bit with the intended, which is kind of the actual final kick in the nuts of the book. It just doesn't have that.
I mean, I'm mocking the box because you gotta. But
that's a new section. Mock the box.
Mock the box. But it is nice actually that if we are going to have to put up with every video game just being a cover based shooter, at least let's have some that are a little bit more interesting.
It's more than that. Sorry, one last. I know I'm rambling on about this, but it's more than that. It's like if you are going to have stories in games, which I'm not the hugest. I don't think is the most important element anyway. If you are going to have stories in games, it's nice to have quite good, rich, interesting stories in games. We were playing Gravity Bone recently, the two of us, which is a wonderful game by Brendan Chung, and I was confused by it because it's exactly the same thing that Uncharted does. It's very scripted, it's very linear, you wander through this world and things happen in a scripted way, but whereas I'm not that keen on Uncharted, I'm very keen on Gravity Bone, and I think it's because both games are trying to tell cinematic stories, but I just prefer the cinematic story of Gravity Bone, whereas Uncharted is kind of a bit of Indiana Jones, a bit of the Living Daylights, and it's just not very satisfying. Is that I've angered everyone now? Sorry.
No. I think there's still loads of people we can anger with this.
I love you, Drake.
Okay, what about the? Are we going to talk about the bolted on multiplayer, or should we just ignore it?
The multiplayer is really good, and I don't know whether anyone's going to play it, but it is really good.
Is it just deathmatch, or does it go beyond that?
It's there's a bunch of different modes. It has a slightly.
Have they come up with any punny names for the modes based on sand or Dubai? Or
Do you know there's like mutiny? They're good. There's a bunch of modes they unlock. I think I'm at level 23 right now, which isn't bad. So I must have liked it because I played quite a lot. But it's all of those normal modes, capture flag, stuff like that. But it's with these booby-trapped environments.
Yeah.
And also the sandstorms, occasionally in the game, at very scripted moments, the sandstorm will blow through in the main campaign, and it completely changes. Your radar disappears. You can't issue orders to your teammates. You can't really see who you're shooting at, so you switch to shotgun and just
I can
run
barely
ahead.
see enemies in most games anyway.
But the sandstorm is very scripted in the main campaign, and in the maps itself, the maps where it's there, it's pretty random. It feels pretty random because there's no narrative. There's no kind of narrative to a deathmatch, so that's pretty exciting.
Okay, well that's Spec Ops: The Line. It does sound very good, actually. I shall have to give that.
It's great. It's great.
Give that a whirl. But let's move on. Let's talk about. I've been waiting to talk about this for a week, ever since I first saw it. Actually, Peter Moore, who is the chief operating officer, good name of Electronic Arts, did an interview with Kotaku at E3 where he talks a bit about the future of games. I think they were asking him about, I can't actually remember, something specific about the future. And in any case, he came out with a bunch of stuff about how he thinks that free-to-play games are the direction that gaming is going. And that, as he put it, hardcore gamers won't like to hear this. They like to circle the wagons around what they believe is something that they feel they have helped build, and rightly so. But what we have seen, whether it was Wii getting Mum off the couch, he continues in this vein for a while, all of the things that elevated it from being a dark art of teenage boys, usually sequestered in the bedroom, that it was a testosterone-filled content that everybody railed against, to where everybody is a gamer. If you can move your index finger and swipe it this way, you're a gamer. That's got to be the way it goes. So it seems like his overriding point wasn't so much that we're going to have to move to new business models, but for the sake of just the business models, but more that it will expand gaming and make it more open to people. In fact, I may have completely mangled his point.
I think his point was quite mangled in the first place anyway. Because,
well, hang on, let me read another bit of it. I think ultimately those microtransactions will be in every game, but the game itself or the access to the game will be free. I think there's an inevitability that happens 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that, let's call it the client, to use the term, is free. It is no different than, this is the bit I find slightly absurd. It's free to me to walk into the Gap in my local shopping mall. They don't charge me to walk in there. I can walk into the Gap, enjoy the music, look at the jeans and what have you, but if I want to buy something, I have to pay for it. So there's two separate things. There's three separate things. On the one hand, he's saying microtransactions and free-to-play will become, is an inevitability, so that's one thing. Second thing, he's saying that it's good that more people are getting into games because the barriers to entry are changing. I assume that's the continuation of that point. And three, some bollocks about the shops.
He's
that
saying
gap thing. That gap thing. Because I read that this morning, and I read it, couldn't comprehend it, smashed my head against a desk a few times, and then read it again.
Did you maybe go to the Gap and wander around?
I did. The only way I could actually get in his mind is actually by going to the Gap, and even then I was just confused and just came out with a nice cardigan.
Okay. Let me try to find a question in all of this. So he's sort of saying that your traditional $60 game or whatever, your Spec Ops, is a dying breed next to these free-to-play games. We've seen companies like
does
Crytek
go on to say that he does still
that,
see a future for the $60 game in some regard, in diminished capacity.
capacity. Let's start with that. Do we agree that maybe certainly based on what we're seeing at the moment, the $60 game is struggling a bit?
Yeah, there will be a handful of $60 games where they can get away with selling it, and if they can, they will. I mean, I think when I saw the Watch Dog trailer, we talked about this when we were just being pals rather than when we were being podcast chums.
Totally different relationship.
The Watch Dog trailer was the first moment where I thought, that's worrying. Like, knowing Ubisoft, there's 400, 500 people on that project. That
more people worked on Assassin's Creed in the world than didn't the last one.
But you know what I mean? You think there's 400 people on that probably,
yeah,
and it looks great, but there can't be that much of a future in making those kind of bets.
And obviously, especially if you, as you imagine, that budgets will just increase. With more power.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also worth noting that despite having half the population of the world working on Assassin's Creed Revelations, Ubisoft isn't a supremely profitable company. Their margins aren't actually working in their favour terribly. So that bet, as difficult as it is, isn't like a slam dunk.
No. Whereas I think something like making another COD is a slam dunk, and I think making another Tomb Raider, to a certain extent, we'll see, but it feels like a slam dunk. Do you know what I mean? It feels like, sorry, bad choice of words. And so I don't think the $60 game is going to go away entirely. I think we're seeing some really interesting changes, and some of them are really troubling. But
yeah, let's talk about that a bit, because I think one of the reasons that everyone always goes nuclear about free to play is that basically all we're really seeing at the moment is examples of microtransactions, in-app purchases, and all that stuff being used in ways that compromise the, I guess you'd call it, creative core of games. Like two very prominent examples in the world of iOS from the same developer would be, in my view, Tiny Tower, and although I haven't played it yet, from what I've heard, Pocket Planes.
You see, I think that's something different entirely, whereas I don't think those are games. I think they are work which you pay to do.
Okay, you see, I actually agree with that, but there are less extreme examples.
Yeah, but then again, so the other day I played Radiant Defense, which I really urge people to play, and it is a free-to-play tower defense game. It's very beautiful. I'm annoyingly can't remember the name of the developer. Is it Radiant Games? I can't remember. Anyway, but it's free to play and it's basically free. It's this great tower defense game, and you can pay to buy packs and unlock a couple of extra turrets if you want. And those turrets are pretty good, and you probably want to do it. But you can actually play a ton of the game for free, and the freeness hasn't led to anything annoying like waiting.
Temple Run is actually a good example of this as well. You can play that for bloody millions of
hours.
And
it doesn't make you wait, or it doesn't take away your... I don't know about Temple Run, but it doesn't take away your experience. It doesn't diminish what you're doing. Whereas a lot of free-to-play games think, I will give you the full game, but I'm going to kick you in the nuts unless you pay me to stop... I'm big on kicking in the nuts. I don't know what this is about. But unless you pay to stop me from doing it. Whereas I think free to play is just people are really struggling with the business model. So like free to play with ads is very common on Android because piracy is so terrible on Android. Every game is basically free with ads.
Is it maybe the issue that we're in this because we're in? I mean, you say people are struggling with the business model. The issue is more that there are so many business models that do work to differing degrees, and is the issue maybe that people are struggling to find the right ethical balance?
I think what we found is that people who make and publish games tend to ruin things for themselves. So the App Store is in a mess because everyone, when they first started making it, everyone rushed to be the cheapest, so they rushed to be 69p, and now because of that they're doing freemium, but they're doing freemium in these really horrible manipulative, unrewarding, unsatisfying ways, and they're all piling in. Not all of them, but a lot of them are piling in and doing it, and they're going to ruin that as well. They're going to, their free to play is, it may well take over. The other alternative is what's happening at the moment is that it is going to become, a word that people associate with unpleasant things. It's going to be, and it's probably going to be both. It's going to take over, and people are going to hate it.
There's definitely a huge PR issue to move on to the actual free-to-play thing, because a lot of people use it as a derogatory term. Like the suggestion is if an MMO goes free-to-play, for example, that it's failed. Whereas actually, in certain cases, there are MMOs that the idea all along was to change to a different business model part of the way through, because that's the naturally lifespan of a game like that.
Also on PC it has a slightly better history in that there's Tribes Ascend, there is Global Agenda, there are lots of games which are free to play which give you feel really fair. There's like Team Fortress 2, these games are, I can't believe they're free to play, and I'm delighted they are because they're brilliant, but that's a completely different model. And when people do the free-to-play model right, you actually want to give them money. I think that's how you know people are doing it right. So Radiant Defense, I was like, I don't particularly want this turret pack, but I want to give you some money because I've been playing your game for like 8 hours.
Actually, New Star Soccer is a perfect example of this, because it is a free-to-play game. People forget, because what happens is you play the arcade mode for a little bit, you think, oh, that's really cool, and then you think, I'll just try the career mode. You get 10 free games, and then you get hopelessly addicted. You give the guy 69p for the rest of the career mode. You play it for, in my case, upwards of 20 or 30 hours or something, for no obvious reason other than it's just so mechanically and sort of it's just perfect in terms of what it does to you. And then you go into the little shop and you go, oh, there's like a pitches and different coloured balls pack and it's 69p. I'm going to buy that because I want to give this guy some more money.
Yeah.
I don't actually want the thing.
I don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem with free to play where there is a finite number of things to buy, and then you've essentially just bought the game as you would have traditionally. It's just been a bit more of a faff. What I don't like is the free to play where there is no end to the money. So Chris Schilling told us,
coins.
Chris Schilling admitted in an app of the day recently that he had ploughed £20 into something in buying currency, and it's like, stop doing that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. That's bad.
That's basically funding terrorism.
Wait, exactly. And if you do it, the terrorists win. That's what I don't like. Sorry, I feel like I've talked too much now.
No. Actually, that would be quite an interesting social experiment for the makers of the new Counter-Strike games. If you could support, you like on the counter-terrorist side, your in-app purchases do sort of morally acceptable things, or they operate within the constraints of normal society. On the terrorist side, you can just buy more bombs and stuff. Terrorists can win if you fund terrorism.
You've gone too far. It's just you've gone too far.
It's a good social experiment. It's the sort of thing that Ian Bogost would write a long blog post about. Anyway,
I think the main concern though is it just being obviously free to play. The balance can be struck. It has been struck this year, but it obviously can be struck because we have enjoyed some free to play games. The concern is it being transposed to places where it just does not belong.
Or maybe it's also the corporate side of it. If you've got individuals who make games like New Start Soccer, to keep with that example, they're probably going to act. They're going to want to make some money, but they're going to want to act in a way that doesn't compromise their creative vision, because that's the defining reason why they became an independent developer in the first place. Whereas if you're EA and you're beholden to shareholders, you're not going to kind of go, well, hang on, I don't want to nickel and dime someone for another 69p bit of DLC because actually I need to make 1.5 million this quarter on digital, and this will do it. So maybe corporations struggle more with.
The other thing to mention is that a load of indie developers, particularly on PC again, make stuff just for free. So like Gravity Bone, which we talked about earlier, it's 15
free.
Minutes long. It's free.
I'd give that guy money.
Yeah, I'd pay a lot of money for Gravity Bone.
Right in, I'll give you money.
But do you know what I mean? Free to play is very appealing if it's your business to make money from games, and that's perfectly legitimate. But there are also a lot of people, it's worth remembering, who make games because they feel compelled to. And when they make games, sometimes they charge for them, sometimes they don't, and that's a different thing entirely.
Okay, sticking with Peter Moore, and specifically his prediction, in a sense, that free to play will become the sort of most prominent form of microtransaction supported free to play will become the most prominent form of gaming in 5 or 10 years or whatever. What's that going to look like if it does occur? Are we going to be in a sort of situation where you've got 2 or 3 massive games each year? I guess they would be RPGs, presumably stuff like your Witcher 2 or whatever, that come out in the traditional model, and then it's stuff like the Crytek game Warface or FIFA, translated into more of a sort of IAP supported thing. And what can we imagine happening?
Well, one concern is it's going to be a mess. Just if it is, say, with just this constantly being brought out of the immersion, just if you're constantly being asked to charge money at any point where you need to get new content.
Is it going to? I mean, that has 2 potential ramifications if that's the case. I mean, one is that these new gamers that Peter Moore believes will be brought in by the greater accessibility of the platforms and so on will be alienated by the inability to comprehend what they're experiencing, and the other that we'll get to the point where we stop thinking about and I hate to use the word art anyway, but games in any sort of creative or artistic sort of sense, because they'll seem more like toys and indeed slot machines.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with the game being a toy at all. That's absolutely great.
No.
But I think there is something wrong with the game being a treadmill or a bus queue, which is the analogy which a certain free-to-play games manufacturer uses. They say that their games are queues, and that they allow you to pay to jump ahead in a queue. And it's like, well, if your game is a queue, I don't really want to play it anyway. I think...
Unless it's Jet Set, which is a game about queuing.
Yes, of course. Which a wonderful game. It is a weird one, but also the other thing you have to remember is a lot of free to play games they need players who don't pay, or they rely on players who don't pay. When you are playing a free to play game for free, you are still providing a service to the especially a multiplayer free to play.
Yes, you enrich the world.
You are providing the paying players with content.
Yes,
is a lot of the case.
In the case of Tribes Ascend, I am providing them with easy fodder for their kills. so they can level up. I tried to play Dota 2, and that's going to be free to play, isn't it?
Yes, with a twist.
I tried to play that the other day, and I got basically hectored out of the game within about 10 seconds by just randoms.
We've got a feature upcoming actually for how long does it take to actually enjoy Dota 2, and I think it is about 20 hours until you actually.
I don't think so. I think Dota. I think it takes a long time to enjoy League of Legends, but Dota 2 sucks you in really quickly.
I got called a retard within about 8 seconds.
This is the problem they have, is that everyone on there is super good, but I think in the final game, no, everyone is very competent.
Yes.
In the final game, so like in League of Legends, you go in and you play against bots, and then you can play against. You can host a private. It's a bit clunky, but you can host a private match, fill your team with bots, and fill the other side with bots, and just play like that until you feel competent.
On the League of Legends, because that's quite a big thing, and unless I'm hysterically incorrect, a free-to-play game supported by microtransactions.
Yes.
That's made by Riot, who because they're doing so well, a mega corporation at this point. You know, they've got all of the trimmings. They've got the offices in Seattle or wherever it is. They've got the tax haven offices in Dublin. Respect to that. They are the Jimmy Carr of free to play. So,
Gary Barlow.
But he's
got off very lightly on this whole thing.
It's because he's so boring. He's got an OBE for driving up the M56 a lot. League of Legends but it's a good thing, right? League of Legends is good.
Yeah, League of Legends is great.
And it's made by a mega corporation. So what is it that they've got right that perhaps EA, for example, could learn from?
I don't think EA's necessarily got anything wrong yet. I mean, EA. So League of Legends, I've played it, and I'm not totally aware of the way that the microtransaction. I think you can buy. There's a selection of. I'm probably wrong, and I'm probably being flamed right now. But there's a selection of heroes who you can play.
You just said you don't think EA's done anything wrong yet, so you're definitely being flamed.
But so I don't think they've really done that much yet. So I don't think they've had a chance to do anything that wrong.
Right.
The thing about League of Legends is there are selection. I think there's always a selection of heroes who are free to play, and then you can buy them. As far as I understand, I'm probably completely wrong. I've played for about 4 hours, and I quite enjoy it. EA, what worries me about EA was Andrew Wilson, who is a very handsome man, was at Develop recently.
Is that what you're worried about?
No,
Andrew Wilson.
Andrew Wilson was at Develop either last year or the year before, and I probably bored people with this before, but he was talking about the way that EA Sports was going to be all connected, and they were going to give people a lot of stuff for free, and he kept coming back to this phrase, give it to the audience for free because they will take it anyway. And that is the wrong way to go into free-to-play, because your strategy is take my wallet but don't hurt my wife and kids, and that is just weird. Do you know what I mean? And that's when you start getting into the kind of the sneaky ways to get money back from them. I think the people who make is it Firefall?
Firefall.
They really want that to be a free to play game, and they've thought a lot about it, and it feels like a positive free to play game. They give you a massive chunk of game for free.
Yeah.
Same thing with Tribes Ascend. They know what they're doing. They are just making a free to play game, and they see some benefit in it. I think EA has been scared into being free to play, and I think that's always going to affect the way that they end up doing it.
I like the more old school examples of things like early shareware, where you were encouraged to, like the Doom shareware or Quake shareware, where you get a massive chunk of the game. Like that first episode of Quake is a quarter of the game. You also play. Obviously, Quake expands and has. They did downloadable content back when it was just called stuff, and you had the multiplayer and so on. But that first episode is iconic, and it's some of the best content in the game. Quake was aided by the fact that it was schizophrenically designed, so nothing, one section looked completely different to another, so it did feel like you got a huge variety. But people would trade that around. I remember when it first came out, PC Gamer on their cover, the cover was just a bloody hand holding the disc with the Quake share on it, because they knew that was the main attraction.
Should we start a concerted effort to kill off the free-to-play term then just call it shareware
Just
again?
bring back shareware?
Yeah.
Shareware is such a friendly term.
Get the Apogee guy. What was his name? You get him. Tom Whatsit?
Tom Whatsit?
No, Tom Whatsit. Yeah, Tom Whatsit. Isn't he a Labour MP? But no, Apogee were the big shareware guys.
Yeah, of course. Tom Hall.
No, Tom Hall worked on.
I know the guy you mean.
Yeah, I do as well.
Anyway, that guy. Get him back.
Yeah.
That went well. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Well, we've set the world to rights on free to play to some extent. I think we're probably as confused about it as the people describing it. So
that is a general message. Just confusion.
I mean, I think the one thing we've got to come back to though is the way that Peter Moore is treating his local Gap. He's wandering around there. He's listening to the music, enjoying it. handling their jeans.
I see him in like pajamas, like brushing his teeth as he walks around.
Oh, this is the free. I can do this. If he wants to buy something, he has to pay for it though. But it just sounds like he's handling the jeans and listening to the music.
I think he's trying on the dresses as well.
Wow. Well, where did that come from?
It's just what he would do when he thinks no one's watching.
He's
back to the Conrad again, but in Gap instead.
He posts interesting stuff
I
on
would
Facebook.
play that game.
Okay, well anyway, I think
That'd be called Spec Ops: The Autumn Line.
Oh my days! That's brilliant.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I love
Laughing at
it.
your own awful joke.
That's brilliant. That's what this podcast was made for.
Done.
Laughing at your own jokes.
Over.
One last thing, I think it goes without saying, but we would all like to preserve a corner of the world where people do make, and we would like to arrange the wagons around it if possible. I think where people do make, games that cost £40 or £50, and have 10 to 15 hours, or indeed Skyrim levels of gameplay.
You want designers thinking about how to make games great rather than how to make them just inconvenient enough.
That. Okay, well, let's move on to my favourite section, questions from the internet. Now, it should be noted that my initial tweet about this was very specific about the topics we would be discussing. Obviously, I talked about free-to-play, I talked about Spec Ops, and I may have mentioned a couple of other things. We'll have to see whether they come through in the questions or not. So, first of all, Matt Edwards asks, could Rare be working on Viva Pinata 3?
They could.
Yeah, there was a possibility. What do you think, Tom?
I don't know. I'd love to think so, because that would be a validation of all of my hard work for the last sort of 5 or 6 years.
How much would you pay for a Quackberry? I don't think a free-to-play Viva Pinata would be good for you.
Oh God, can you imagine a Viva Pinata supported with microtransactions?
I'd have nothing but Quackberries.
We're earning Chris Schilling spending £20 on,
I know.
money. You and I would be destitute out on the streets.
Sorry, darling, we have to move. But look at all these Quackberries. They'll be moving with us.
Oh God, I doubt they are somehow. I imagine that they're working on some Connect bollocks.
I just want a Quackberry in Connect Sports. I want him to just pop up and head a ball. That'd be cruel.
You could make a Viva Pinata Smash Brothers rip-off. PlayStation Battle Royale All Stars, whatever it's called. Is that what it's called?
I suppose the logo could be 2 crossed shovels.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. That brings me on to a similar question, actually. I don't know why we've got such a Viva Pinata focus in these questions, but Martin Gaston asks, is it true that Donlan, he called you Doonbass, so I'm calling you Donlan, is actually such a nice person that he couldn't bear whacking bad pinatas with the shovel?
It is true, and I think he knows it's true. I think we talked about this before.
He's using prior knowledge there.
I'm not happy about that.
Let's change the subject. Chris Schilling asks, given that Rare made Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise for the DS, would you like to see a 3DS version?
Yes. Good question, Shill.
It is.
The Shillster.
That's an unfortunate nickname.
No. You're right. Especially sorry.
The connotations are not.
He's a good man. No, that would be great.
I think so too. Although I'd prefer it to be a new Viva Pinata game for the 3DS. The likelihood of that, I mean, in the Venn diagram of things which are unlikely, that hits the tiny sliver of sweet spot.
How do you feel about Viva Pinata kart racing?
Oh God, no! But they've already done something like that.
That was a thing. Travelling Paradise, not Travelling Paradise. There was Party Animals.
Party Animals,
which did have a racing stuff.
I think I gave that like 2 out of 10 or something, and I think I sent it back.
That was the very first game I reviewed for IGN, and I didn't think I'd got the job because it was a mock review thing I was doing as part of the interview process. And then because I didn't think I got it, I just went and traded the game they gave me in. And then
nice.
Felt quite bad about it afterwards. I asked for it.
I've never actually. I mean, you sign these contracts with not contracts, but agreements in theory with publishers when they send you games, and the idea being that they can actually ask for the code back. I think Viva Pinata or Party Animals is probably the only game I ever considered sending back. Okay, moving on. Matt Lees asks, pink crocodile, yes or no? I'm not quite sure what he's insinuating with that, actually. I think he's asking if we would like to have sex with a pink crocodile.
Oh, no.
No.
I'm on the fence.
Is that euphemism?
It is, yeah.
Okay, James Thompson asks, honey badgers in Viva Pinata would be effing carnage. Can't see, this isn't even a question, can't see hitting them with a spade going down too well either. Nothing really to add. I don't know why he's mentioned the honey badger. Another of my favourites. It's possible that this tweet that I put out has pushed people in strange. I'm actually wearing a honey badger hoodie today. I don't know if anyone's noticed. Honey badger, he doesn't care. Okay, actually, on to stuff that is about the podcast. Simon Stewart asks, do you think Spec Ops will be a big hit? Should they have delayed it until the Summer Games drought?
This is coming very close to a Summer Games out.
Yeah, July is an absolute wasteland.
Yeah.
If you're going to release a game about a desert, do it in July. It's most thematically appropriate on a number of levels.
I can't see it being a massive hit, personally, and I don't think its marketing's up at all because it looks bland as. I don't think the inner depth is even hinted at slightly.
No.
I just don't know. I think it may be one of those games people talk about a couple of years down the line in very fondly.
Maybe like a Metro or
like Enslaved.
What'd Flip? That game that I banged on about for ages, the Raven
Pinata?
shooter. No,
Singularity.
Singularity, that's it, yeah. Or Viva Pinata. It is the Viva Pinata of unique and intense war shooters. Yeah, I don't really see it selling. I mean, I think that's just about the market as much as anything. I mean, especially in the UK, it's so depressed at the moment. I mean, you've got Lego Batman 2 at number 1. And I don't know, I doubt they would be thrilled with the number of units it's sold. I mean, when you think about it, the games weren't doing fantastically well this time last year when there were twice as many game shops. So, no, I don't think it will be a big hit. But it sounds like it's good, which is the more important thing. And hopefully they will continue to commission good content and not... Actually, I quite like the fact that 2K hasn't really bothered to update its business models at all and still just makes the same old stuff.
They're sort of suffering for it at the moment, aren't
Well, you know,
Yeah.
at least they'll go out giving us more of what we want. Let's rinse them.
they? Blaze of glory.
Das Ginge, a podcast regular, asks, at what level is Spec Ops worth a purchase? Full price, £30, £20, £15, or God no, don't do it?
I don't know what...
£17.50.
I don't know
18.
how to answer. I'd say it's very good. If you think you'll like it, you probably will, so go and buy it.
Okay, but if I were literally holding a copy and offering it to you, and you had some money in your pocket, how much would you pay for
Well,
it?
no, but it's not me, though, is it? It's Das
No, I'm
Ginge.
asking you. You.
I like it. I would... Yeah, no, I'd buy it.
What, full price?
Yeah.
You'd
why not?
£40?
Yeah. You're trying to get me into... Yeah, probably.
What, 41?
What, we're going up?
42.
50 and no higher.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. Chris Schilling's back, and he says, on the subject of free to play, I'd like to hear Donlan's thoughts on Pocket Planes. We talked about this a little bit.
Yeah,
as well.
he's trying to get me into trouble because we're friends, and I'm sure I've...
Well, I've previously said that I think Tiny Tower is basically the app equivalent of the Antichrist. So,
Yeah,
this sounds worse on that level.
The thing is, I'd have to properly play Tiny Planes, Tiny Pockets. I'd need to give it proper time,
Planes,
which I don't want to do.
You missed the Pickpocket Planes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That is good.
Laugh at your own jokes time.
Yeah, great.
Oh, God.
There's another iTunes ranking.
I'm surprised they're still letting us put this up, actually.
These guys just laugh at their own jokes.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just, thematically, if Apple's going to clamp down on anything, it's probably just going to be the guys who are basically saying everyone using their store as a tool or a charlatan.
Yes.
Anyway, or the Antichrist. Simon Stewart asks, can free-to-play games support a large traditional studio such as Crytek? I guess the answer is yes, given that Crytek has said that all of its games are going to be free-to-play from now on.
They must have done their maths, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You would assume they've done some maths.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just, rudimentary, do the number of people that... Well, hang on, because... No, I'm just not even going to try to do this. I don't really know what I'm talking about. Is what I'm getting at.
They opened a Korean office, 4 or 5 years ago?
Right.
So they've been thinking about this for a long time.
And they've made a game called Warface.
Yep.
Is that it? Which is reasonable. I mean, as names
Has
go.
anyone actually played Warface here?
It's meant to be pretty good.
Yeah, really?
I'd heard the opposite.
I heard
Really?
the opposite. I
Yeah.
mean, admittedly, I heard it from him, so don't take this as some sort
Well,
of...
that's one source. 50-50 then. Don't know.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, let's move on then. Calm Down Tom asks, and that's actually his thing. It's not that he's telling me to calm down. Although he says, are games news/review sites failing to cover titles like League of Legends because it's hard to cover free-to-play games as reviews/previews, etc.?
I think it's just... I think we are struggling in some regards, but it's just because they've got such a dedicated player base, and that you need to know what you're talking about to be able to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think also because we have most of the people who read our site, and this isn't based on hard science necessarily, so much as just a feeling, tend to be interested in lots of games rather than a single one. And in the same way that if you were covering World of Warcraft, you would need to write about it pretty constantly and play it all the time in order to convey what was going on what was changing in an interesting way. With a game like League of Legends, you need to do the same. And for our audience, they're kind of more interested in. I mean, I'm sure there are people who do play it a lot, but probably more interested in just hearing whether it's worth getting into for a bit.
Yeah, that's what. When you start playing, what you're looking around for is the article which says, "Here is how to start. Here's a good character."
It's like DayZ again. You know, when you start with that, you read something like Quintin's piece about it, or any of the RPS stuff, and that makes you interested in it enough to try it and give it a go. But there's another class of player, the ones that actually sustain it, who are more interested in the daily undulations and what's going on.
I think there is something there, though, that these are the biggest games in the world, and they are not being written about as often as you would imagine.
Well, maybe it just illustrates that the kind of core gamers who we are and who we write for are becoming divorced from where a lot of the profitability is in the games industry and where a lot of the investment and returns are.
A lot of these things are little. I like Minecraft. Minecraft players.
Or mince raft, as we want to write.
I think a lot of Minecraft. I like Minecraft. Everyone likes Minecraft. Minecraft is great. But there are the really hardcore Minecraft players. I think a lot of them only play Minecraft. And they're not interested in games. They're interested in this one game.
Yeah.
And they need. Luckily, there are lots of sites that just cover that one
exactly,
game.
They're really well catered for by their communities. And in terms of a site like Eurogamer doing it, we have to have our own angle on it and do our own thing. And in terms that they can see through our bullshit, basically, if they're going to try and jump on that bandwagon without giving it the due care and without talking the talk as these people who are so invested in it can.
It's certainly super hard to cover this sort of stuff well. I suppose it's going to be a bigger problem. It's only going to get bigger.
Well, I guess it depends whether you see it as a problem. I mean, I like the fact that we can address the subject occasionally when there's something that catches our attention going on. And obviously it's our job to go out there and find those things as they happen. But, I like the idea of being able to service the people who like Minecraft or the people who like League of Legends regularly. But realistically, that we're not the site for them. So we would hope that occasionally when we write something exclusive or interesting about it, that they see that they would want to read more. But I just don't really see it as a problem. It's a business challenge, but it's not necessarily an editorial one, unless your editorial goal is to be all things to all people, which ours is not, incidentally. I do think, though, actually, the second part of his thing, reviews, previews, etc., is interesting because we do think that the shape of games editorial is moving past these arbitrary divisions, which are legacy from the days of print, where you organised things that way. Anyway, that was Calm Down Tom. Das Ginger's back, and he says, as Swator, how are we pronouncing that again? Star Wars is going free to play. Is it?
Is it? I think they're thinking about it.
Yeah, there's thinking about it.
All right. We're not fully embracing the premise of the question, but let's say if Star Wars is going free to play, does this mean the end of the subscription model for MMOs going forward? I don't know whether that specifically would, but the subscription model for MMOs is certainly changing. You look at games like Elder Scrolls Online being announced, and I guess the Secret World coming out fairly shortly, and you do think, good luck with that.
Yeah.
If you're going with the traditional route.
But has there been any word on, like, Titan's going to be subscription based?
The new Blizzard game. I don't know actually, but those guys are pretty inventive. Admittedly, the real money auction house has been I guess disaster's not the right word.
Catastrophe would do it.
Clusterfuck is probably closer at this point. But it was an interesting idea. So I guess they'll try something. And then have to give all of the Koreans money back when it doesn't work.
I think if anyone can make a subscription MMO, it is Blizzard.
I love that. I love that for some reason. Okay, and actually, there's almost no point with this question because this is something we've sort of covered anyway. I read the wrong thing. Andrew Percival asks, have any of the podcast guests ever paid for in-game currency, as I shamefully did recently for Pocket Planes, or Pickpocket Planes as we've renamed it?
I don't think I have actually.
You have, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
What was it?
Oh God.
Was it Tiny Tower?
No,
please not.
For some reason, because my head's not working today, it was a half brick game.
Jetpack Joyride.
Yeah, Jetpack Joyride. I did pay about about a quid's worth, about 2 quid's worth even.
I've definitely I bought in-app purchases.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I've ever done currency though.
I think currency is just a slippery slope because there's always gonna be more.
I considered doing it for Tiny Tower, and then I deleted Tiny Tower from my phone and was rude about it on the internet for a year.
That's as good.
Yeah,
That's the equivalent.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, that's probably about all we've got time for. Or certainly all we've got to talk about. Pickpocket planes. That's my takeaway, if you like, from this week's podcast. Thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you.
And to Christian.
Thanks.
It's been interesting. We've done everything. This has been a wide ranging podcast.
Exhaustive.
We've had Spec Ops: The Line. That was great. Lots of good stuff. Books, that shit. We've had free to play. We clearly don't have a bloody clue about that, do we? That's really the thing from that. And I'm going to say it again: pickpocket planes. Hold that thought. And see you next week. Bye.